Hey, what's good everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is our last video in the Budget Master Classic series where we're going to be featuring Melmetal, up to one legendary Pokemon, and one Pokemon that you might already have in your storage. So today's featured Pokemon is Mamoswine, and Mamoswine serves a pretty good role in terms of taking out Togekiss, taking out other dragons, and even going toe-to-toe with Dialga in the one-shield scenario. So thought this would be a pretty good fit with Melmetal in the back as an ABB lineup, and instead we're going to be leading Giratina-Ultra this time instead of the Giratina-Origin. So I know the previous video we had Giratina-Origin with Melmetal and Rhyperior. This time we're going to use Giratina-Altered with Melmetal and Mamoswine. And the main reason I decided to go for Giratina Altered here is because Mamoswine is actually a little bit squishy, so I thought the extra bulk from Giratina Altered would help out a lot. And also, with Giratina Origin getting walled by Snorlax and even Obstagoon, Giratina Altered has a little bit better fight in that scenario, and I think it's going to be a little bit better of a replacement. So, in terms of IVs, once again, use the best ones that you have. I have a Hundo Lucky Mamoswine here that I got through spam trading, and then my Melmetal is 15, 15, 14. And although my Giratina Altered is 14, 14, 14, and it loses a bulk point against Togekiss in that matchup, it's a losing matchup anyways, and you really don't want that alignment to happen anyways. So I felt like this was a pretty good Giratina Altered to power up all the way. So let's go ahead and get into the battles. We're in the 2940s right now. It's a little bit later on in the day compared to the previous video. So let's see how we do. Getting into our first battle here, we're going up against Point Shot Gam, and we're going to be leading a Giratina Altered into a Kyogre, and this actually winds up being a Shundo Kyogre, so very cool to see. Now, I've been on the Kyogre side many times in this matchup, going up against a Giratina or a Dialga in the lead, and if I lose switch advantage and I can't maintain alignment, then the only win condition that I know of is Blizzard onto that dragon in the front. So I'm expecting my opponent here to try to force shields down, and he's going to bring in the safe swap Dialga, which I can respond instantly with Melmetal. So pretty good situation for me, although I know that if there's a Togekiss or another dragon in the back, here Mamoswine has pretty good coverage, but I got to make sure that shields are at least even. And my opponent makes a great play here. He's waiting for me to throw the superpower first, and usually in this case, most players that I play against, they actually just go for the Draco Meteor right on 11. So in this particular situation, my opponent is actually going to come out with a shield advantage despite the situation here. So I'm going to go for the superpower here, and of course, as all Dialgas do, they will try to CMP you on the second charge move. So my opponent does go for the Draco Meteor here, and I'm going to go for the Rock Slide. So going for Rock Slide here, it's not going to KO the Dialga, but it's going to give me some compensation energy. You can't stack back-to-back Draco Meteor and Iron Head, so going to get a couple of extra Thunder Shocks in as compensation, and it's going to allow me to come out with a charge move and potentially get to 2 charge moves against this Kyogre. So I'm going to go for the Rock Slide first, and then go for the superpower. And going to chunk this Kyogre as much as possible, but I'm also keeping track of the energy as well. This Kyogre can potentially reach a Blizzard against the Giratina Altered Form. So going to go for the superpower here, and I'm going to bring back in my Altered Form, and I'm expecting an immediate swap once I come back in. So this does a pretty good chunk of damage to Kyogre. At this health range, probably 2 Dragon Claws are still needed to KO it, but maybe the Shadow Claw damage will add up. But as soon as I bring in the Giratina, I'm going to see the Togekiss come back out, and unfortunately I have an I have a shield disadvantage here, so only going to be able to reach 2 Avalanches in this matchup because Togekiss charms are very, very strong. And I actually think that my opponent made a mistake here because I'm going to reach the second Avalanche here, and right before he's going to get to a charge move here, got to shield this up because I really need to take down this Togekiss so that my Giratina Altered can thrive. And going to go for the Avalanche here. Now, if I were my opponent here, I would actually consider shielding the Togekiss because the Togekiss is going to deal so much damage to this Giratina Altered Form, but for some reason, my opponent lets this go. So I can kind of see what the line of thinking here is. He wants a protected Kyogre, but the Kyogre is very low right now, and even if it gets to a Blizzard, this is the reason that we went with Giratina Altered Form, right? We went with Giratina Altered because it is a lot more bulky than Giratina Origin. Had this been the Origin form, right now Blizzard would one-shot KO this Giratina, but Giratina Altered Form, as you're going to see, is going to be very, very tanky. And right before I get to the KOing Dragon Claw here, my opponent is going to go for the charge move here. This is definitely going to be a Blizzard. And Giratina Altered is going to survive by just a sliver of health. So going to be able to reach the second Dragon Claw here, and this is going to deal enough damage to the Kyogre to take it out. And Giratina Altered and all 2 remaining members of the team showing their worth in this matchup. Coming into the second match of this set here, we're going up against Artis89, and I'm going to be leading Giratina Altered Form into a Melmetal. So once again, just like the previous team, this is exactly where you want to see the Melmetal. You definitely don't want to go into a Melmetal with an energy advantage, and my opponent realizes this, but he brings in a Giratina Origin Form. So Mamoswine does have a pretty strong matchup against Giratina Origin. It's not the best, right, because Giratina Origin can still survive some of those charge moves. So I'm going to chip it away first because these Powder Stones are definitely going to add up. And I am going to have to shield here to maintain switch advantage, and I'm expecting my opponent to go for a Shadow Ball here because he knows it's a losing matchup, but instead he baits with the Mamoswine. So I'm going to see what my opponent does here. I figured at this point that my opponent would have just taken the shield advantage and let the Giratina Origin go down, but it looks like in this situation that my opponent actually wants to go take it down past the one shield. So I'm going to throw another charge move here. I actually thought this was an Mamoswine, but got a little bit scared here, and I wound up shielding right before the charge move hits. A little bit of an animation glitch right there, and I'm going to try to race to the next Avalanche. So at this point, I'm going to beat it, and if my opponent does decide to shield here, then I'm gonna be at the mercy of a potential Shadow Ball coming my way. And here we CMP on the move here. So again, too early to be a Shadow Ball here. And I kind of figured at this point, he probably is carrying Dragon Pulse. So this is fine here. My opponent aggressively swaps back into the Melmetal, which means that we can bring back out our Giratina Altered Forme. And this is a much closer matchup than expected, right? With shields down, Melmetal actually puts up a pretty decent fight here. So my opponent's going to go for Rock Slides here. I'm going to go for Shadow Sneaks here. And this is kind of similar to what you're going to see in the Ultra League version of this matchup. Melmetal can get pretty close, but again, with that Rock Slide nerf, you can never tell. It's really based on energy. And these Shadow Sneaks aren't doing a whole lot of damage. So this matchup does take a little bit to play out. So I'm anticipating my opponent to actually swap back out because this will take longer than 60 seconds and switch timers will be back up. So I'm going to go for as much damage as I can with the Altered Forme. At this point, I'm very happy because we have the alignment that we need despite not knowing what the third Pokemon is. So here, you can see our switch timers are just about to come back up, and I am anticipating a swap out here as soon as my opponent throws the Rock Slide. And we're going to wait for it, and we can see the Giratina is coming back in, and I'm going to store a move here on my Altered Forme, bring back in the Mamoswine, farm down this Origin the entire way, and this is going to force the Melmetal to potentially come back in and throw energy, and I'm completely okay with that. So Melmetal is going to come back in. I'm actually going to beat it to the Avalanche here, and despite being a Steel type, it's not going to resist it that much. So Avalanche takes out the Melmetal here, and in the back is actually a Lugia. So very spicy team by my opponent here, but in this particular case, I know I have the Melmetal in the back. Melmetal does survive a single Aeroblast, and if I can land this Avalanche here on Lugia, and you can see how much damage it does, boom, does more than 50% here. So even if I get farmed down here, Melmetal will live an Aeroblast, and I have the perfect answer for it in the back. So gonna wait my switch timer out just in case I need to catch something, but this match is pretty much over, and I think my opponent knows this. He's trying to farm a little bit of extra energy, but at this health range, Melmetal with that Rock Slide and the Steel typing, not only going to resist the charge moves from Lugia, but going to be able to secure us another win. Okay, our third match of the set is up against Butches. And we're going to be leading Giratina Altered into a Groudon. So once again, like the previous video, we're going to have to stay in here and try to limit this Groudon as much as we can. So this matchup is not as clear of a winner as the Giratina Origin against Groudon, and mainly because Groudon is still a pretty bulky Pokemon, right? So Altered Forme does not output as much damage as Origin does, but it's going to have a lot more staying power in this matchup as well. So here, I'm just going to go for Dragon Claws, and again, this is going to be a potential Earthquake here, and I decided to show this up because the Groudon is likely to go for the Earthquake first and then continue to bait with Fire Punches, right? So might as well shield the first charge attack here and then see what my opponent does and react accordingly. So here I'm going to go for the Dragon Claw here, continue to chip down this Groudon. Not expecting the Groudon to shield in any case here because these Dragon Claws, they're really not worth shielding, right? They're 35 energy, so my opponent's going to hit another charge move here. This is definitely going to be an Earthquake, and as you can see, Altered is pretty bulky, right? So CMP right there, and at this point, I know if I land this Dragon Claw, I can just Shadow Claw the rest of the way down, and the rest of my team is a lot safer. So opponent, of course, is going to let this go, and he might reach a Fire Punch here before he faints, but at the same time, this is not going to do a whole lot of damage. I'm just going to come out with some energy on Giratina, and I can always save swap to one of my redundant types in the back. So going to come out with some energy and see what he brings in, and it's going to be a Giratina of his own. So kind of a delicate situation here, but at least we're seeing the Giratina right now. So my plan is to deal as much damage as possible with Giratina, and then come in with the Mamoswine, right? Can't swap out of this matchup because we have Melmetal in the back. And even if my opponent actually does get an energy advantage here, Shadow Clawing down my Giratina, this is still an okay situation for us because Mamoswine, despite being somewhat squishy of a Pokemon, can still survive a Shadow Ball. So I'm going to come in here and start Powder Snowing away. And I can't shield here. I just have to be careful. Just in case he goes for the boost here, I would lose. So he does go for the Shadow Ball. I go pretty low, but overall, I'm going to be able to outpace him to the next Avalanche, and my opponent brings in a Melmetal. So this is a pretty delicate situation. As you guys have seen before, I'm not very good at playing the Melmetal versus Melmetal matchup, and this is kind of a mind game situation. So my plan here originally was to let this first superpower go, just in case he was going to debuff himself, but it's actually a Rock Slide. So I think I'm in a pretty good spot here. So I decided to go for a Rock Slide of my own. So, and I actually over farm right there. So another mistake from my end. And my opponent's going to throw once again. I decided not to shield once again. Going to go for the superpower. And now I go for the Rock Slide, and he CMPs me here. So in this case, I definitely made a mistake here because kind of knowing what the matchup is like, my opponent is obviously going to save the shield now. Now that my Melmetal is very low, he's going to try to farm down with Giratina Origin and then throw a move into my Mamoswine. So that Rock Slide, just as bad on that bait as well, but now I'm going to go for a pile of superpowers here, and actually I have a small chance of winning the game still because our switch timers are right back up, and then I'm going to go switch to my Mamoswine here to clear the debuff, throw the Avalanche, and it's kind of up to me to see if I can get to another Avalanche in time. Probably not because the Giratina Origin does have energy, but if I can get this low enough with Powder Snows, maybe a Rock Slide will KO from this range. So let's see what happens here. My opponent is going to be throwing an Ominous Wind into me, and I still have a little bit of energy, so I can beat it to a Rock Slide, but as you can see here, this Rock Slide, nerf or not, it was not going to KO, so Giratina Origin Form is still in the yellow, which means that this Rock Slide is not going to deal enough damage, and I'm trying to Thundershock down, but it's got Dragon typing, and with 1 HP in a Dream, my opponent pulls off the Ominous Wind, and unfortunately we're going to take the loss for this one. So definitely misplayed that Melmetal situation in the late game right there, and that's going to give us our first loss, but again, that is something that I can always work on in the future. In the fourth match of this set, we're going up against PT Chev, and I'll be leading a Giratina Altered Form into a Snorlax. So here's a situation where having the Altered Form is actually pretty helpful. I am going to swap into my Mamoswine here just to check what's in the back, but Giratina Altered Form can beat normal Snorlax going straight Dragon Claw as long as the Snorlax is not carrying Earthquake. So, but here I see the Shadow Snorlax. Those Shadow Licks are actually going to add up quite a bit, and anticipating my opponent to do the superpower right there, and he's going to bring in his Mewtwo. So this is a bad matchup for Mamoswine, especially down a shield. So the best that we can do right here is try to get shields down or try to chunk this Mewtwo into farming range. So going to go for the Avalanche here, and then my opponent is actually going to overfarm, so I get to a second Avalanche as well. So not anticipating the shield here, but you never know. And my opponent decides to use both shields on the Mewtwo to maintain that alignment of Snorlax onto Giratina Altered, which is a very, very smart move. So here, no reason to really shield here, right? My opponent has 2 moves at this point, so if I do shield, it's going to be a waste, and Mamoswine is pretty squishy here, but at least it did its job here. It got 2 shields, and it's putting us into a pretty decent situation here. Mewtwo with an energy advantage is pretty rough, though. So we're going to get to the next Shadow Sneak before the Mewtwo does to the next Ice Strike. But I know that the Shadow Sneak is not going to KO, and unfortunately, we're going to have to burn our last shield. So going to go for the Shadow Sneak here. Getting the Mewtwo, however, into farm down range. So this is actually a pretty good situation for us. I am going to shield this up, and if my opponent actually decided here to just stay in with this Mewtwo and let it go down, we would be in a bad spot, but my opponent makes a blind switch into Dialga, and I have the Melmetal here. And in the situation, learning from the previous game, I am going to go straight for Superpower on 9, and this way the Dialga cannot reach a Draco Meteor, which means that the best move he can get to is Iron Head. And also, considering the situation here, when you're in this matchup, right there. When you're in this matchup against Dialga and you're expecting 3 charge moves to be thrown, right? A Superpower, an Iron Head, and then a Superpower. This is going to knock off at least 30 seconds off the switch clock. So what I'm actually doing here is I'm very happy that we CMP'd right there, because if we throw 2 more charge moves and I'm charging up energy, when the Snorlax comes back in, it's not going to be able to reach a superpower in time, and I can actually swap back into my Altered Form, because now I know that this Melmetal is going to be a very important member of the team. So going to go for the superpower here. You can see here that my switch timer is almost back up, and thankfully my opponent is waiting it out as well. So going to go for the superpower here. My opponent will not reach a superpower in time with the licks, so going to deal as much chip damage as I can, and right when I throw the superpower, I take a look at my switch clock and I notice that it's right back up, so I'm going to swap right back into my Giratina form. And if this was a superpower, this would have been fantastic value, but my opponent is very conscious of the switch here and goes for the body slam instead. And now it's up to me just to go for Dragon Claws here, and as long as I can go chunk down this Snorlax, this is actually going to be a pretty won battle here, because my opponent cannot lick down in time. We're going to get to these Dragon Claw spams very quickly, but my opponent makes one last desperation play, and he swaps and makes a great catch onto his almost fainted out Mewtwo. So I'm going to go for the 0 charge here, and because I go for the 0 charge, I can get 1 extra Shadow Claw of energy in, and we're going to see here, can the Snorlax lick down the Giratina in time? It cannot. We survived with 1 HP on Giratina. Had the opponent been able to lick down right there, he would have beat us to the superpower on Melmetal, and we would have lost the game. So GG's and well played to my opponent there. Fantastic catch at the end, and I almost wound up losing that match. And to wrap the setup, we're going up against Manuel SN. And going to be leading a Giratina altered into a Dialga. So pretty bad matchup, and I actually have to go and dip to my Mamoswine here. I'm going to see what we can draw out in the back that's going to potentially counter Melmetal, and he brings in a Heracross. So very spicy pick from my opponent right here. You almost never see Heracross in Master Classic, but this is pretty awesome to see. But I think my opponent made a mistake here because he's going to end up letting the first Avalanche go, and you can see how much damage an Avalanche from Mamoswine is going to do to this Heracross. And here, I know my opponent is trying to go for the farm down. And I think my opponent realizes here, so I'm going to spend 1 shield right here, and my opponent is definitely going to be throwing a close combat. And as soon as I see the close combat, I'm going to try to race him. Powder Snow versus counter. Can we farm down? We can. Look at Mamoswine. What a beast right here. And I'm going to throw an Avalanche back into this Dialga. So this is a really good situation for me because I was able to win switch with just 1 shield. And you can see the power of Mamoswine right here. How much damage does an Avalanche do to Dialga? Almost half. So very, very strong right here. And I can gladly bring back in the Melmetal here. Knowing that I have 1 switch advantage, now I have the wall to Dialga. So unfortunately, my opponent does have an energy advantage, but he swaps into Giratina Origin Form, so I'm going to bring in my Giratina Altered. And this is not a fantastic matchup, so I'm going to spam as many Dragon Claws as possible, and all of the carrying weight has to be put on Melmetal here. So I'm going to go for as many Dragon Claws as I can, and my opponent is going to throw on 7. And here I realize that because my opponent has 2 shields and I have 1, no reason for him not to throw a Shadow Ball here, so I'm going to shield that one up. And this is going to allow me to potentially get to 2 Dragon Claws here before my Giratina Altered Form goes down. So a lot of Twitch notifications coming up here, but this was on stream. So, and I'm going to throw the Dragon Claw here, going to get 1 shield from the opponent. And unfortunately, he is actually going to reach a charge move right here, so couldn't get to the 2nd Dragon Claw, but no problem here. We have a Melmetal. And going to come in and try to take down this Giratina Origin Form. We're still at a pretty healthy rate, and I also know that the Dialga is not actually within range for Iron Head energy yet. So we still have a little bit of window to try to win this game. My opponent will shield this up and makes a huge, huge error. He actually swaps back into his Dialga here. I'm not really sure what he was doing, but knowing that my opponent is going to throw a charge move here, I actually guess that this is not going to be a Draco Meteor, and it's just an Iron Head. So this gives me a huge window of opportunity to win this game. Had my opponent just stayed in with the Giratina Origin, I definitely would have lost. But gonna go for the superpower here after getting to 100 energy, and this is gonna allow us to get to 2 Rock Slides to be able to take out this Giratina Origin Form. So gonna go for the Rock Slide here. I am debuffed, so gotta be really careful here. Can the Melmetal beat the Giratina Origin to the next move? And we're gonna see right here. Oh, he actually gets to a move here. This Dominus Wind. For sure. I don't know if he got to the Shadow Ball or not, but he's definitely getting worried. But Ominous Wind, even on a debuff Melmetal, gonna leave us with a sliver of health, and actually we're gonna go for the superpower to be able to KO this Giratina Origin Form. So fighting moves, countering Ghost type Pokemon confirmed, and we wound up going 4-1 in this set. So really good job right there in the last game by Mamoswine, being able to take out the Heracross, farm it down with Powder Snow, and dealing that huge chunk of damage to Dialga, which actually allowed us at the end game to just use 1 superpower to go ahead and KO it. And this was later in the night for the stream, so I'm back up to 2993 after that 4-1 set with Mamoswine. So hopefully you have a good idea of how that Pokemon operates in the Master Classic meta. And once again, another budget team featuring up to 1 legendary with the Melmetal in the back, paired along with a Pokemon that you might already have. So had a lot of fun playing this team. Mamoswine definitely is very impressive. If it was a little more bulkier, it might have even more play in Master Classic. So once again, this is going to end the budget series for Master Classic. I have 4 teams that I presented you, and hopefully this gives you an opportunity to get into the meta yourself. We're going into Season 8, of course, after a couple of weeks, so this might be a good starting point if you want to try out Master Classic for the very first time. Once again, if you like this content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and I will see you in the next video.